Hello, my name's Gavin. This is Genre Books. This is episode 4 of my short series, The List of Lost Penguins, looking at penguin classics over the years and specifically titles that no longer are published under that label. I'm sort of starting, the premise of starting the penguin classics I've taken to be these black. Well, this was black before all of the scratches and yellowing. This black edition with usually a 3/4 picture. This one is a full cover picture. This is Vasari, Lives of the Artists. That moved on to a cream or beige bordered, again big picture, but this kind of style which began or reintroduced a sort of colour coding for penguin, red for British, yellow for continental Europe and some medieval works, purple for Greek and Roman, green for everything else. I'm sure I'm missing a colour in there somewhere. That lasted until I think the early 2000s. We moved on to this presentation or style, which has only been slightly altered for the current presentation of Penguin Classics, purely black and white. Still with an appropriate piece of artwork fairly prominently displayed. Now, this is the first of these episodes I have recorded since the first of the series went out on the channel, so there is something to address, because a couple of people have pointed this out. There were, before the black Penguin Classics, this series, again, these were colour coded. These are all French, including one I've actually read, so that's a bit of a rarity. So green was French, brown for I think Greek and Roman, red for Russian, etc., etc. All of these in the Penguin Classics were translated works. I will probably be doing something about these later at the end of the series, but the distinction I have made here is between the Penguin Classics and just Penguin Classics. Since they dropped the definitive article is where I start to take my interest, and in particular I am looking at works in the Penguin Classics series that did not survive from the cream bordered era to this one. Anyway, enough of the housekeeping, back to the list itself, and today brought to you by the letters D and E, and beginning this dozen works with Thomas de Quincey, Recollections of the Lakes and Lake Poets. This was originally published in Tait's Edinburgh magazine between 1834 and 1840 and then collected. It is de Quincey's memories, slight biographical details of his meetings with Wordsworth, Southey and Samuel Taylor Coleridge. But if you thought Thomas de Quincey was a big name to drop from the list, the next is a little bit more surprising still. Daniel Defoe, The True-Born Englishman and Other Writings. Now, with a title like that, you may be thinking that does sound a little bit passé, but this is not some patriotic scree, quite the reverse. This is a satirical poem which attacks xenophobia, not just over the new king, King William III, who was on the throne at the time of its first publication, him being an immigrant himself, but talking about other immigrants from continental Europe. Not bad, quite progressive for 1701. The third book, Miss Ravanel's Conversion from Secession to Loyalty by John W. DeForest. So, moving to America. This is a critique of slaveholding from an American Civil War veteran. It's a mix of the realist and the romantic, and was first published in 1867. I hadn't heard of this before. Coming across it on the list, I would be interested to get hold of this. I recognised the name though. I did wonder whether I was just getting it confused with DeForest Kelley, Dr. McCoy from Star Trek, but no. DeForest's other main contribution to literature is an 1868 essay in which the term was first used, the Great American Novel. Book number 4, and Mr. Encyclopedia himself, Denis Diderot, Selected Writings on Art and Literature. So this is Diderot wearing his art hat much more than his scientific one, but this book looks to be one of the rarer discontinued works, and I'm basing that on the fact that the only copy I've seen is quite expensive indeed. A double dropping next, books 5 and 6 from this list, and again a fairly famous writer, this time Benjamin Disraeli, Victorian novelist and Prime Minister twice in the 19th century. This was possibly a little bit more surprising because one of the books that has been discontinued is one that I only read for the first time last year. I haven't read the other one yet, but I enjoyed the first so much I'm probably going to get to the second. It might be a bit more difficult to get a Penguin copy now, but the two books, Sybil, the one I read, Coningsby, the one that I didn't. Book number 7, Divine Right and Democracy, an anthology of political writing in Stuart, England. You would think, possibly, I can see why this one has been discontinued. I think you could well put in an argument for a reprinting of this with a little bit of tweaking, or maybe just a new version, Divine Right versus Democracy in 21st century Western culture. This is a collection of Civil War pamphlets and arguments and has the spectrum of opinions. James I has something in this anthology. I think his take on the divine right of kings may be different from most people's. But in this anthology we also have Sir Edward Coke, John Lilburn, James Waugh, lots of thinkers and pamphleteers and salesmen of the time. When I saw this next work had been dropped, my jaw dropped a little bit as well. John Dryden's translation of Virgil's Aeneid. I have nothing more to say about it. It's the Aeneid, it's by Virgil, it's translated by John Dryden. Obviously wasn't selling enough. To Regency England now, or England and Ireland, and a bit of the continent as well in this case, and if it's not Regency, I'm sure someone's going to correct me, but Maria Edgeworth and Ormond, the tale of Harry Ormond geographically moving from Ireland to Paris. The story is also a journey into modernity and different ways of thinking from his upbringing. Maria Edgeworth was a very famous, popular, successful author at the time, less well known now. I'm not sure if any of her works survive in Penguin Classics range. More big names are dropped at a stroke with the next book, number 10, the Penguin Book of 18th Century Verse, edited by Denis Davison. John Gay, Alexander Pope, Jonathan Swift, Thomas Parnell, and more. All of them not deemed good enough to stay on the Penguin Classics roster. And for book number 11, if you think it's bad to drop some 18th century authors, the Penguin Book of Elizabethan verse has also fallen by the wayside, and you don't get bigger writers than the ones mentioned here. Sir Francis Bacon, Thomas Campion, Thomas Dekker, John Donne, Robert Devereux, Christopher Marlowe, Sir Walter Raleigh, Sir Philip Sidney, Ben Jonson, and some guy called William Shaftesbury. I don't know. There's always an unknown writer in there somewhere. Rounding off this dozen for today, the Exeter Book of Riddles, a book I admit I had not heard of before. One I will absolutely snap up if I ever see it about, because it sounds like fun. Edited and translated by Kevin Crossley Holland. This is a book of riddles in Old English from the 9th century Exeter book. But that's that. The books under D or E that have been dropped by Penguin. I'll be back next time to see how many F-bombs have been dropped. Until then, bye.